This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, third teen charged. Police arrest a 16-year-old in connection with a fatal stabbing at the Halifax shopping centre.
Controversy brewing why some residents in the Annapolis Valley are pushing back against a proposed campground.
And mobile meals. The Salvation Army's food truck gets the green light to hit the road in Sydney.
A blocking pattern will keep things unsettled for the next few days as a low spins to our east, bringing in a few shower chances, some clouds, and some breezy northerly winds. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. A third teen has been charged with second-degree murder in the death of 16-year-old Ahmad Al-Marak.
Al-Marak was stabbed last week in a parking lot at the Halifax shopping centre. Police say a 16-year-old male youth who officers had initially arrested shortly after the killing but later released was arrested again today. The youth appeared in court this afternoon. He remains in custody.
Last week, a 14-year-old boy and girl were also charged with second-degree murder. They are also in custody. All three accused are scheduled to return to court May the 13th.
Officers were called to the parkade on Mumford Road at around 5 p.m. on April 22nd, where they found Al-Marak injured. He died shortly after being rushed to hospital. Meanwhile, a vigil was held in downtown Halifax Sunday for Ahmad Al-Marak. Roughly 100 people gathered at Peace and Friendship Park Sunday afternoon to remember the teenager. Attendees prayed and shared memories of Al-Marak, who came with his family from Syria to Canada as refugees 8 years ago. Al-Marak's father and best friend spoke to the crowd.
I haven't slept in a while. I've been missing school because I can't think, but my brain is like in a tornado. Everything doesn't feel real. Nothing feels real.
Hussein says he and his classmates have been getting a lot of support from the community.
A Halifax tenant is speaking up about the residential tenancies enforcement system. Michaela Rutley has spent a year and a half trying to get $1,500 she's owed by her former landlord. But even with residential tenancies and small claims court decisions in her favor, she has turned to local bylaw officers, police, and sheriffs with no luck yet. Now she's left wondering if she will ever see the money.
Basically, to have it enforced by the sheriff, they're going to require some sort of information on your landlords, like maybe their personal address or like their banking info. But the problem is it's really hard for a tenant to access that information if they haven't given it to you openly. I know, like with the people I'm dealing with, they keep switching around their banking and they will not reveal their personal address, so there's no way for me to actually get the sheriff to help me out.
Rutley is one of many tenants and landlords who have been advocating for a better system of enforcement for years.
And staying with that story, it's been a year since a consultant's report advised the provincial government to create an enforcement and compliance unit to regulate rental disputes. But the province still doesn't have one. Nicholas Sagan reports.
Whether you're a tenant or a landlord, you may have had some kind of conflict. Landlords charging illegal deposits or jacking up rent above the rent cap, or tenants not paying their rent or damaging a property. It's been 1 year since a report about tenancy enforcement was given to the province. So is dealing with these sorts of issues getting any easier? If you find yourself needing to take action, no matter who you are, you start by going through the residential tenancies program. An officer hears the case, then makes a decision. But if one party doesn't comply, the residential tenancies program doesn't have its own way to enforce orders or levy fines, and police and bylaw officers won't get involved. So each party has 10 days to appeal the residential tenancies decision. Then it can be enforced through the small claims court by hiring a sheriff. But the problem is this doesn't always work. If you don't have the other person's banking information, address, or other personal information, sometimes there's nothing the sheriff can do, leaving some people fighting for months or years with no resolution. Landlord and tenant groups have been saying the province needs an enforcement unit for years. In November 2022, the Houston government hired a consulting firm to study Ontario's enforcement system and outline the scope, structure, and costs of setting up something similar in Nova Scotia. Then we heard nothing for months. Last May, I asked Colton LeBlanc, the minister in charge of residential tenancies, if his department had received the report. He said yes, but refused to release it publicly. Then in August, CBC found out the report recommended a similar enforcement and compliance unit to Ontario. It set out a timeline that would have had the unit in place by March. In October, LeBlanc said legislation wouldn't be introduced in time to meet the March deadline. Now, that takes us to the present. It's been a year since the report was given to government, and we've seen no movement. Minister Colton LeBlanc says an enforcement unit won't be a silver bullet to fix residential tenancies, and it might not even meet all the tenants and landlords' expectations. A spokesperson says the department is still considering the report and won't release it yet. Landlord and tenant advocates I've spoken with over the past year say the issues are getting worse, and they're calling on the government to act. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Halifax.
A proposal for a new private campground is before a local government in the Annapolis Valley, and it's facing significant opposition from some of the people who live nearby. Taryn Grant visited the community of Scotts Bay to learn about the proposed campground and the community's concerns.
On a remote corner of the Bay of Fundy, in a small and historic community, there's a controversy brewing.
Some people support the notion and some people don't. And because it's been going on for over 2.5 years, lines have been drawn in the sand, sort of on which side people feel, and that is not good for community cohesion.
And it's pitting neighbors against neighbors.
Lindsay Steele owns several pieces of land in Scotts Bay, totaling more than 300 hectares. She breeds show horses, raises chickens, and farms crops. Her next-door neighbors want to open a campground, and she's worried it could come at the expense of her business.
With the campground, we're very concerned as to trespassing into our Marinville areas because it abuts the campground, and people think horses are romantic and they don't know, and we would hate to see somebody hurt because they have wandered into an area that they shouldn't.
Other people flag concerns about excessive campfire smoke, traffic, litter, and infringement on agricultural land. The proposed site is a 40-hectare plot that's been in Julie Scaling's family for generations.
I wanted to do something with the property that was useful. It was always a place that anybody in the community could go for kind of different recreational things. So I wanted to kind of embrace that. My dad always had a little campground there and allowed anybody who wanted to camp there could camp there. He never charged anybody for it. So it wasn't really a business. It was just, he just let them do that.
The new campground would be a business, and some of the revenue would go into a social enterprise, inspired by Scaling's daughter, who has Down syndrome.
So I was trying to think, there's a lot of other people who have physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, and some emotional disabilities, that it would be nice to have a space where people could actually be able to create their own campground, so be involved with the process of it, or come and camp and feel like it's a very inclusive and accessible campground.
Scotts Bay has 2 provincial parks, one with a public beach and the other with hiking trails that lead to the top of Cape Split. Only a couple hundred people live here, but thousands visit every year.
It's going to happen at some point that there'll be some other, accommodations, maybe another campground, who knows, but, trying to align myself with what the needs are, kind of Kings County needs in a sense.
Scaling needs approval from Kings County councillors to move ahead. They've asked her to address the community's concerns, so she's consulted with experts and says everything can be mitigated. A public hearing is scheduled for this week, and later, council will have the final word by voting yes or no. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Scotts Bay.
A third-party review of last year's Barrington Lake and Tantalon wildfires says the province's response was well coordinated. The report, commissioned by the province, also called for improvements to training and air support, among other items. Jim Rutherham is with the Department of Natural Resources.
Well, we've continued. We've already started some of these things as well. We've started some training, more training always. We have purchased some new equipment as well. And we're certainly looking at this report, and we're going to take all the recommendations into play and start to work towards them right away.
I'll talk to Jim Rutherham of the Department of Natural Resources about how things might change this forest season. That's our Newsmaker interview just after 6:30. And Ryan Snoddon with us now to talk weather.
And of course, wildfire season top of mind for a lot of folks this time of year.
Yeah, and there were a few grass fires over the weekend. It doesn't take long this time of year. I know the water table is fine, but here at the surface, it doesn't take long for things to get dry, and yeah, the risk of fire is certainly there. Now, most of the province is in the low range, that is true, but we are in the moderate to high range in a few spots, especially along the Northumberland shore and into the Halifax area as well. This map looks a little more favorable than it did yesterday when, of course, the relative humidity was so dry and we didn't have those showers yet that we had a couple of those showers overnight. So that did ease things a little bit, and the burn ban has gone from completely red overnight into this morning back to restricted, which is burning only allowed at night and into the early morning hours for most of the province, minus Sydney metro area and Richmond County. But this is going to be something we'll have to watch in the coming days because we're not going to be seeing any real substantial rain. It's already been a week. Last Sunday was the last time we had really any kind of a meaningful drink from Mother Nature, and that's really not going to change over the next couple of days, despite the fact that we've got this low swirling just to the east of Newfoundland. That is going to influence us with the northerly winds, keeping things cool, a little bit cooler, I should say. Area of high pressure, though, is going to, for the most part, keep us dry. We do have a couple of shower chances overnight tonight into tomorrow morning, maybe even a few flakes mixing in for tomorrow morning in the east and northeast, but generally dry. And that's going to be the case over the next couple of days. Just some shower chances. The clouds a little more dominant than not, but we will see finally a chance of showers into the late Thursday, Friday time period. But really, Tom and Amy, looks like we'll have to wait all the way till early next week. And so that fire map is something we'll be showing frequently here on the show and keeping you posted. And if you are thinking about burning, make sure you do check that provincial website.
Yeah, keep an eye on that.
Thanks,
for sure.
Ryan.
Okay, Ryan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, after a long delay, the Salvation Army's food truck in Sydney will be hitting the road. After inquiries by CBC, the Cape Breton Regional Municipality has given the nonprofit organization the green light to offer meals while mobile. CBC's Kyle Moore has a story.
The Salvation Army is known for helping community members in times of need. Their mobile food truck is another way for them to lend a helping hand. But they have been waiting weeks for approval from the CBRM.
So really, it's been conversations and emails.
Janelle Dirtle says a team of volunteers has been eager to launch a new mobile feeding program in the Sydney area. The truck offered hot meals for those in need during Hurricane Fiona and recently during the snowstorm that dropped 150 centimeters of snow on the island. The Emergency Measures Act allows them to do their work without a permit, but there's been some confusion around what's needed on a day-to-day basis.
We had a wonderful group of volunteers from the community kind of come alongside of us and say, hey, we want to help the Salvation Army with your food bank volunteers and your emergency disaster volunteers. We want to get this truck up and on the road and going out into the community as soon as possible.
After a call from CBC, it turns out the Salvation Army doesn't need a permit. Mayor Amanda McDougall says they will soon receive the green light to hit the road.
Because they are a nonprofit organization, they are not required to get a permit. They're going to be giving food to those in need, and so we're really grateful that they've stepped up to do this.
McDougall says it took a little extra time to figure out the details because this is a request the municipality has never received from a nonprofit organization.
This being more of a regular schedule is new. So again, it's something that needed a bit of time to figure out, okay, how does this work within our bylaws and policies?
Dirtle says the need in the community right now is overwhelming, and it's important they start their work right away.
I think it's critical, people have really deep needs in the community right now. They have a physical need for food. They also have a need for friendship and for a smiling face and for a safe place, right? And so we provide that. That's what the Salvation Army does. We stand in the gap. When there's a need, we show up.
Bagged lunch and hot drinks will be provided on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the Sydney area in the coming weeks. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
The federal government says it will repair dozens of small craft harbors in Atlantic Canada and Quebec in the coming year. 40 were identified as part of an announcement today to promote spending in the federal budget. Some of the work will repair harbors still not fully recovered from Hurricane Fiona 2.5 years ago. Fisheries and Oceans says more projects will be funded from the $463 million set aside for small craft harbors over the next 3 years. The Liberals say they want to put pressure on their opponents.
On one hand, the Atlantic Conservatives can't claim to be the voice of fishermen and their communities, and on the other hand, vote against such measures such as investing in economic hubs in coastal Canada. That, to me, is just pure hypocrisy.
Conservative fisheries critic Clifford Small says this is nothing but electioneering, and the department has no idea that the money will be spent. There will be 50 new spaces for children at a new childcare centre when the new Nova Scotia Community College waterfront campus opens in Sydney this September. The centre will be operated by the YMCA, and priority will be given to students and campus employees. But the centre is open to the community. The province is financially supporting the centre and contributing money for the outdoor play area. There is a virtual wait list for the spaces already open on the Cape Breton YMCA website.
A restructuring firm says several bidders have offered to buy all or part of the two companies that operate Atlantic Canada's largest newspaper enterprise. Toronto-based KSV Restructuring Inc. said in a report that some of those non-binding offers, if accepted, would enable the deeply indebted Saltwire Network and the Halifax Herald companies to continue operating as viable businesses. KSV's report does not say how many bids were received, the initial bidding deadline, and it doesn't provide any details about who made the bids. Saltwire owns a number of news publications across Atlantic Canada, including Halifax's Chronicle Herald, The Telegram in St. John's, Newfoundland, and The Guardian in Charlottetown.
A team of Nova Scotians representing Canada are now world champions.
They won gold at the World Seniors Curling Championship on Saturday.
And this was the winning shot made by skip Paul Fleming from Halifax. Heading into the final end, Team Canada was tied 3-3 with Team USA.
That throw in the eighth end gave Canada a 4-3 win. Canada's women's team also won gold at the event held in Switzerland. Congratulations to them all.
Done well.
Nova Scotia, well represented. That's it for us for the first break. Do stay with us. Quick break on the way.
Yes, we have a lot more to come on CBC Nova Scotia News. Student protest. A pro-Palestinian encampment is growing at Montreal's McGill University campus.
Truce talks. Diplomatic efforts continue at the World Economic Forum to secure a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Well, it's always pretty in Mahone Bay, especially here. Ryan is up next with the full weather forecast. We'll see you after the break.
All right, just a quick note to say that the curling championships we just talked about happened in Sweden, not Switzerland, as we said.
Both sound a little similar at the start, but so.
Yeah, wherever they were, they missed out on a fantastic weekend in Nova Scotia because, man, was it ever nice.
It was gorgeous.
So long overdue to have a weekend like that. Yesterday was phenomenal. Even got the sun on my neck to prove it. Yeah, boy, underestimated. It was it's terrific. Lots of folks in the 15, 16, 17, 18 range. Keji was almost 19 degrees.
Oh, wow.
That was our hot spot. Just super, super nice. And as we mentioned earlier, yes, have to enjoy the sun, but safely, and making sure we're keeping an eye on those burn restrictions as things are dry now. We need another shot of rain for sure. Have a look at this, our webcam shot, and this just shows. Again, that looks very summer-like, and I'm sure there was a few folks on this beach yesterday. That should say, not Lower Truro, but
didn't recognize that as Truro.
Lockport.
Okay, there we
that
go.
is, of course, Lockport Crescent Beach, and a beautiful shot there. 13 degrees is the temperature at Lockport right now, and that's, yes, the high temperature down in that area today, though 15 at Western Head. You can see that temps 15 at Ingonish Beach as well, up in the northeast. So we did have some nice warm spots there for today. Temperatures have really dropped off here across the north and east. 5 degrees at last check at Cheticamp. And this is going to be the spot here. We have to keep an eye on maybe a few flakes mixing in overnight into tomorrow morning. Northwest winds, and you can see, yes, sustained in the 20, 30, 37 range at last check at Beaver Island, 28 in Yarmouth, gusting to 40 in Yarmouth, and gusting to 50 at the Beaver Island site, gusting to 50 or just shy of it in the Sydney metro area as well. Lots of cloud in the mix over the last little bit. Really not a bad day overall, but again, yesterday was just the bar. It was set so high. There's the low that's spinning to the southeast of Newfoundland. I mentioned it earlier in the program. If you're just joining us, that low is not going anywhere anytime soon. So it's going to be continuing to wrap some moisture in to the region. For us, this area of high pressure is going to keep us a little, well, maybe I should not answer that phone, but don't they know I'm trying to do a forecast here? Also, I should probably have that on silent. Anyway, this area of high pressure is going to continue to keep us overall dry as we move for the next couple of days. Some moisture going to try to get in the form of some clouds, maybe a couple of isolated showers, but yeah, we aren't going to be really getting that substantial drink that we need until early stages of next week. Let's walk you through it. Temperatures tonight ranging from around 2 to 5 degrees. 1 along the eastern shore, those northerly winds, 20, 25, even 30, and yes, some gusts in the 50 to 60 kilometer per hour range here in the northeast, including for Cape Breton. So that's something to keep in mind, that northerly flow is definitely going to have a feel. There is, a couple of those flakes mixing in, maybe even some patchy freezing drizzle overnight tonight into tomorrow for Cape Breton and the northeast. Note the brighter skies and the milder temperatures in through the west. Should get to around 8 degrees in the Sydney metro area, though, with that northwest wind tomorrow. Cooler in Inverness and across that Northumberland shore. And again, those winds are going to have a bite there, gusting 50 to 60. Those flurry chances even down towards the Truro region tomorrow. Halifax near 8, and this will be our hot spot down and through the southwest, 12 to 13 degrees with those northerly winds. Could squeak down into the 13, 14 range again on Wednesday. Again, clouds mostly dominant. Couple of shower chances here in the north and east, but this is generally the setup over the next couple of days. It's, as I said, not until we work our way into the, Friday again, isolated shower chances, really not until early next week that we have that chance for some precipitation that for anything substantial, Tom and Amy. And again, Saturday, Sunday, at this point, again, looking pretty good. So good that the phone is ringing off the hook.
I'm dying to know who that was.
You got to answer that.
Yeah.
It feels like a Monday, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does.
Okay, thanks so much,
call them
Ryan.
back.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, CBC reporter Jean LaRoche recently hit a milestone, 3 decades of reporting at Nova Scotia's legislature. So it seemed like a good time to zoom out and look at the landscape and how it's changed.
Tonight, he and fellow reporter Michael Gorman explain how attempts to get answers and hold governments to account have changed over time.
I took this image about a month ago because I thought it was a perfect illustration of how much things have changed during my time at Province House. Here you have a single reporter talking to a single cabinet minister surrounded by communication staff, whether they're from government or from the three main parties. And I'm not the only one who's noticed a shift.
Everything is about control of the information, but it's not about providing information, it's about controlling it and getting it out there on their own terms.
Like me, longtime journalist Stephen Kimber remembers a time not that long ago when politicians didn't need handlers.
The public is the loser in all of this because it's we're not getting the information we need as citizens to know what's really going on in our province.
And that's pretty much the way things were when I was here in the 90s. In fact, there were a bunch of us who sat in the front row of the speakers gallery, a bunch of reporters pretty much shoulder to shoulder, but as you can see, things have changed. There's plenty of room now.
John, what was it like back when there were horses and buggies downtown?
I don't go quite that far back. That's not a bad one, though. You go ahead. I'll roll with it.
So, John, when did you start seeing things shift down here?
Well, there's always been some control by the Premier's office, but things like when Rodney MacDonald became Premier, they wanted us to use a single microphone so that the Premier didn't look like he was under siege every scrum. And then, of course, when Darrell Dexter and the NDP came to power for the first time, there was really a centralization of the message and requests by reporters really being funneled through the Premier's office, massaged, and then sent back out through Communications Nova Scotia.
And that's continued through subsequent governments, right? We saw Stephen McNeil come in. He did away with the weekly release of the Premier's schedule. It became more difficult to track what he was up to. Access started to tighten. We've seen that continue with the Tory government. We see examples sometimes of Tim Houston taking trips and us not even being informed about it at all, or at the very minimum after he's already gone. And this is sort of the way things have progressed.
And this really is a bit of a pattern over the years, and we're not the only ones who have kind of noticed it.
Every time a new government comes in, they come in promising that they will do certain things, open up the process. Immediately they get into office and they recognize that that's not in their best interests. And then they not only go along with what the previous government has done, they up the ante a little further and make it that much harder to get information out of them.
And that's sort of consistent with what we've experienced down here, you certainly for much longer than me. But all of that being said, what was it that got you thinking about this and wanting to discuss it now?
Well, because it's been so gradual that if you hadn't been down here for eons like I have, that you may not have noticed, and not everyone pays as much attention to what goes on here as you and I. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's not just reporters complaining about access and that sort of thing. We are asking questions on behalf of the public, and that work is important to democracy.
It is important. It's not sexy. It's not fun in many ways. But this holding politicians to account on behalf of the public is an essential part of democracy. And if you don't have that, then it's very easy for governments, for individual politicians to make decisions, to do things that have consequences for all of us as individuals with no accountability.
And really, Mike, that's the job of a political reporter. It really is to hold governments to account for what they say, what they promise, and then what they do.
All right. Appreciate that perspective. Thanks much, guys. Up next, I'll talk with Jim Rutherham of the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources about a report that looked into last year's fighting of the two major wildfires in this province. That is our newsmaker interview.
Yes, please stay with us. You are watching CBC Nova Scotia News.
A third-party review of last year's Barrington Lake and Tantallon wildfires says the province's response was well coordinated. The report commissioned the province, also called for improvements to training and air support, among other items. Jim Rutterham is the director of the Fleet and Forest Protection with Nova Scotia's Department of Natural Resources. Sir, a recent report on the Barrington Lake fire and the Tantallon wildfire last year says that the department's response was well coordinated, but it also called for some improvements to more training, clearing protocols, strengthening air support. How will the department be better prepared for fire season this year?
Well, we've continued. We've already started some of these things as well. We've started some training, more training always. We have purchased some new equipment as well, and we're certainly looking at this report, and we're going to take all the recommendations into play and start to work towards them right away.
And so how will the training be different, or what kind of training do you see being needed?
No different training, just more of it. Last year, we tapped into a huge part of our department that doesn't usually get used. So we've continued more training and drawn more people into training that normally wouldn't have had it before. And we're trying to make increase our capacity in all of our positions with training for our regular staff as well.
What about training for firefighters who are used to fighting structure fires and then are turning their attention to forest fires?
We've always offered training to our municipal fire departments around the province, and that continues as well. It is a different thing, fighting structures or fighting wildfires for sure.
So what new infrastructure or firefighting gear will you have available to you this spring?
Well, nothing. Well, we have new hoses, new pumps, new regular gear, stuff that we've always had in the past, just replaced after last year for the extra use we've had, and increasing capacity as well.
What about aircraft?
We are upgrading our fleet of aircraft. That was in place before this all started, because you can't buy those overnight, but that's in place as well to upgrade our helicopter fleet.
So will you have a new helicopter or new helicopters this year?
No, that's about a 3 to 4 year process to replace our fleet as they come up, but that is in place as well. And of course, our helicopters are very versatile machines, which we like to have.
Would having more volunteers have helped last year?
I don't know. We certainly work with a lot of volunteer fire departments. I believe there was almost 50 fire departments during that busy week we had that were actually working, helping with the fires. Of course, they were doing structure work or helping us supporting with water and other things as well, and on the fire line as well too. It's hard to organize that many staff sometimes, but we'll continue to work with those and work on our options for doing whatever we can.
How will the new Nova Scotia Guard roll into effect with fighting wildfires?
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. That Guard is not in place yet. We're working towards that, or that's being worked on now. It'll be interesting to see how that rolls out and where those positions might help us. I don't know if they'll be specifically on the firefighting line. They could be. I'm not sure yet, but certainly in support roles as well, they will be very beneficial.
I know it's still being imagined, but looking back, would having had a Nova Scotia Guard have changed anything last year, do you think?
I think so, yes. If they had been organized and ready to help in certain capacities, whether it be with support for feeding people or for helping house people or whatever, I think that support would have been helpful if we had it organized and ready to go, yes.
So where else do you need more help?
Oh, well, that's really a hard question. You don't really know until you see it. We sometimes need help with capacity, with resources, which we can get through our other agencies. All the agencies belong in Canada to CBC. We also have the compact we can deal with as well. So when we do need extra help, we can draw on those resources as well. But maybe some of the closer to home stuff, like I mentioned before, feeding all these people and making sure they were all housed could have been helpful.
Well, the report seems to suggest that there should be a review of the wildfire investigation capability, that there maybe needs to be some more help there. What has been missing?
I didn't read that in the report, Tom. Perhaps I'm wrong though, but increasing capacity in all our positions might help. The investigations, of course, my position is to help put the fires out, and then the investigations fall into other groups to deal with. So I really can't speak 100% to that, but more capacity in a lot of roles would help us.
The two major wildfires last year, of course, were caused by humans. We are seeing some grass fires around the province already this year.
Yeah.
What do you want people to know?
I want people to be extremely careful with wildfires this time of year, any kind of fire. It's really, and then last year shows it, it's everybody's responsibility to help with wildfire prevention. And if you're going to choose to have a fire, make sure you check our burn restrictions every day at 2 o'clock. That's when they're updated, and to follow them closely. And that's the most important thing. It's all of our job to try to help keep these fires from ever starting.
Given the conditions that we're seeing already this year, are you able to in any way sort of look at what we might be in store for this year?
Well, I always tell people, ask me again in September, and I'll let you know exactly what happened. But so far this year, we're not as dry as we were last year at this point, but that could change very quickly. This was a very dry weekend. We had numerous fires over the weekend, of course, from people not being careful. This little bit of rain we had today was very helpful. We'll take any kind of moisture we can, but we really, people just need to be very careful. Anything they do outside that could cause a fire.
Jim Rutterham, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, worried about foreign workers, Conservatives want more details on Ottawa's $15 billion Honda EV deal.
The pro-Palestinian protests taking place in U.S. colleges have started to spread north. Demonstrators have set up encampments at both Montreal's McGill University and UBC in Vancouver.
They are demanding their schools divest from Israel-related investments. The CBC's Sarah Levitt has more from the McGill encampment.
This encampment has grown quite a bit since it first started on Saturday. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like here on McGill campus, they've set up about 50 tents inside, surrounded by fences. Obviously, you can see that they have put their signs up for why they are here. Since, not just here at McGill University, but there have also been an encampment set up at the University of British Columbia. Copying in ways or getting inspiration from what we've seen on U.S. campuses across that country. Similar calls. In this case, they are asking for McGill University to divest from Israeli-related funds as well as organizations. They're here until the university meets their demands.
I think that McGill is not taking this as seriously as it should. McGill needs to understand that this is student tuition that is going into literal genocide, and that these students have a right to use their voice, have a right to speak up.
There's a lot of different people coming from different perspectives here. We have a lot of anti-Zionist Jews here, a lot of people from Independent Jewish Voices or IJV. And we've formed a really amazing community.
I did speak with one Jewish man who lives nearby and came on campus to see what it looked like.
They shouldn't be taking over McGill's territory and involving McGill's campus. They should be doing it peacefully on the streets and then go home.
McGill University has said that the encampment goes against university policies. They did say at one point that they understand there's a freedom to right of expression as well as assembly, but that according to them, they have seen video evidence of incidents of anti-Semitism and intimidation. That's something that CBC hasn't independently verified, and the protesters here have said that's absolutely not true. So far, police haven't come on campus, have given no indication that they will come on campus. And as I said, protesters say that they will stay here with or without police intervention until their demands are met. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
There's a renewed push for Hamas to accept the latest ceasefire deal and to release the remaining Israeli hostages. And Israel is being urged to allow more humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza. But hope remains in short supply for civilians enduring unrelenting violence every day for nearly 7 months now. Briar Stewart reports.
Another morning begins preparing to bury Gaza's latest victims. Airstrikes overnight killed more than 24 people in Rafah, among them at least one baby. This woman shows where another infant was saved from the rubble earlier after 3 homes were destroyed. Surrounded by death, there's no break from the sound of Israeli planes overhead. Every day people die who have nothing to do with what's happening, said this man speaking to a freelance journalist working for CBC News. Even as Israel vows to carry out an offensive in Rafah, there are some signs that a ceasefire deal could be close.
The only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas.
There are reports the ceasefire could last 40 days, potentially freeing thousands of imprisoned Palestinians in Israel in exchange for fewer than 40 of the 130 hostages believed to still be in Gaza. The families of 2 hostages pleaded for leaders to agree to a deal.
We urge you to do everything and bring our people home now.
Egypt's prime minister said the political situation in Israel and in Gaza is frustrating the negotiations.
A lot of pressure internally in both sides not to reach any kind of compromise.
And some of those trapped in an increasingly desperate war zone have little hope a ceasefire is coming. Everyone is fooling Gaza, says this man. Even your own blood and flesh, they fool you. What is more likely, they believe, is what they've been experiencing for nearly 7 months. Another night of misery. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
The federal Conservatives want the government to provide more information about its multi-billion-dollar funding contracts with electric vehicle manufacturers. It comes as a union says some Canadian workers are being sidelined by foreign workers. Marina von Stackelberg explains.
Release the information. Prove me wrong. I dare you.
Conservative MP Rick Perkins says it's still unclear how many temporary foreign workers will build Canada's huge electric vehicle and battery plants. The Conservatives introduced a motion today at a House of Commons committee asking the federal government to make public details in those contracts about the hiring of Canadian and foreign workers.
What is the final number of allowable foreign replacement workers in this contract? And how much are Canadians going to have to pay to employ these foreign replacement workers?
It comes after another massive funding announcement last week, $2.5 billion from Ottawa to help Honda build 4 new electric vehicle plants in Ontario. Canada's Building Trades Union says it's in talks with the company to maximize the number of Canadians building that factory. The union has accused another EV manufacturer, Nexstar Energy and LG, of using foreign workers to build its facility in Windsor. But the company says of its 2,000 employees, 72 are not from Canada and necessary since they're installing specialized equipment.
The next generation with more opportunities.
The Prime Minister assuring the union at its annual conference in the capital, the government will try to make sure as many Canadians as possible are employed in the construction projects.
When you have a Canadian worker sitting at home collecting employment insurance in their home community, and there are foreign workers doing his or her work in a plant that is just completely inexplicable to that Canadian worker. We can't have that happen, Prime Minister.
I agree entirely, and we will be there to support you every step of the way. We will be there to lean in to make sure that the intent and the support of the contracts is there.
This is about electric vehicles, but it's also about courting support from working-class Canadians, something all the political parties are trying to do. Another sign of that, tomorrow Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will also speak at this conference of trade unions. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
The idea of open banking is being called a game changer for financial tech companies. It will let consumers or businesses share personal and financial information between approved banks and institutions. But advocates say Canada is moving too slowly in rolling it out. Anis Haidari has the details.
This Calgary tech company has been listening to open banking talk for years.
We're making some good strides towards it. At the same time, we'd love to see the government, take more of a stance behind it and accelerate this for the sake of Canadians.
Open banking could let Canadians switch banks automatically. It lets consumers move personal data between businesses.
The ability to, look at their entire financial picture, provide them with insights that are geared and personalized for them. Those are the types of things that would really, help us when we would have open banking in place.
The federal budget said it's coming with money allocated and a regulator named. While there are already slower ways to share banking information, experts say the government making it easier is also safer.
The open banking framework would actually allow them to have access to the same type of services, but know that the service providers have been vetted by the government, that they are bound by certain security requirements.
But the federal budget has no deadlines on this project, and fintechs say we're moving slowly compared to Australia.
Why can't we do this? Why can every other Western developed nation do this in months to 2 years max?
The Canadian Bankers Association says it supports moving ahead, but didn't answer if it supported speeding up open banking. Back at Neo Financial, they're still waiting.
At the end of the day, it's consumers that are paying a higher price as a result of slower timelines.
More legislation on open banking is expected in the fall. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
Okay, you're going to have to take another call anytime soon, you think?
And what's the forecast going to be?
Yeah, that's in case you missed it earlier, in the middle of the forecast, the phone rang. Surprise, surprise, it was a spam call.
Okay.
So,
those telemarketers.
Those telemarketers, yeah.
You don't need to call them back.
No,
anyway.
definitely don't need to return the call. Maybe they were looking for some little insight into the forecast, which we will give you now. First, our viewer picture of the day. And you can see that, yes, a beautiful shot here. And I bet this was a terrific spot yesterday.
And nobody there.
One of the best Nova Scotia beaches right there.
It really is. I've been in that
space.
exact spot on a day just like that, maybe a bit warmer, but it was terrific and such a beautiful spot, as you said. Christine, thank you so much for sharing Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. A little cool at Melbourne tomorrow.
I bet.
Around 4 degrees the high. And
That's
actually,
very cool.
Yeah, chance of even a flake mixing in from basically Colchester, Cumberland, Eastern Hants, and east of that line. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. Generally brighter and warmer the further southwest you go. Similar story temperature-wise on Wednesday. I think we all will be looking at that cloud fairly dominant. Some shower chances. It's all thanks to that low spinning off to the east, not moving much at all. And so we will be looking at those northerly winds tomorrow, a little on the persistent side. Wednesday, Thursday looking fairly similar. Again, isolated shower chances again on Friday, but a little more prevalent. But really, it's Monday we have to wait. But the weekend looks good.
It does. Another one.
Sure does. All right, finally tonight, a Japanese celebrity is turning 70 this year.
Yes, and as part of the celebrations, he made a special appearance today in Tokyo. Yes, it was 1954 that the first Godzilla movie debuted.
And this past weekend, the radioactive reptiles image, standing 100 meters, was projected onto a Tokyo municipal government building.
The show runs until May the 6th. Godzilla, in fact, holds an official title in the city ward where the building is located, Cultural Ambassador.
I don't know if I'd give him that title.
All right, that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.